At this moment at the command center, Zhu Zhang was informed about Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li's departure the moment they left the team. Headquarters, this is Chen Xiaoxiao. We have separated from Zhang Yi and Liang Yu. They did not obey orders and stayed outside Jiangning Square with an overly negative attitude. We couldn't tolerate their behavior anymore, so we chose to leave the team and continue the operation. When Zhu Zhang heard this report, he approved the request in a calm tone. I understand, he stated. You two can act on your own. Chen Xiaoxiao, a little surprised, previously thought Zhu Zhang would be furious and probably settle accounts with Zhang Yi. But she didn't expect Zhu Zhang's reaction to be so calm. Too calm, actually. Unable to figure out what the higher-ups were thinking, she gave up on the matter. On the other hand, as Zhu Zhang watched the surveillance of Zhang Yi, he felt a headache coming on. He held his forehead with a knowing look and stated helplessly, I almost forgot that this guy has always been a defensive counterattacker. It's really hard for him to be a scout. At this point, it's not an exaggerated fact that the mutants from the outer cities nominally obey the orders of Blizzard City. However, it also does not mean that Blizzard City could order them without restrictions. Especially now, letting Zhang Yi and his team go deep into the fog to find the whereabouts of Eclipse Moon is almost equivalent to orchestrating their death. Knowing all this, Zhang Yi simply chose to play a word game with Zhu Zhang. This way, he was neither defying Zhu Zhang's orders, nor was he acting directly against the original mission. Zhu Zhang had no choice but to focus elsewhere since this incident does not have much impact on the overall operation. After all, the mutants in the outer cities were mainly used as bait. So Zhang Yi wasn't to be blamed that not a single enemy showed up at the southeast of Jiangning Square. Let's just wait and observe first. Zhu Zhang folded his arms and leisurely stated, his eyes fixed on the other two battlefields which had quickly reached a white-hot state. On the western battlefield, the situation on Wu Shifang's side was becoming more and more dire. The earth-walking immortal Jia Heading was stomped by Dagonghui Yanjin, and his internal organs were shattered. At present, his situation underground was unknown. Wu Shifang, relying on the joint battle with his clone, couldn't even block 3 moves from Dagonghui Yanjin. After all, the power of the Yokozuna was terrifying in itself, and after transforming into a mythical creature, his personal bravery alone was enough to sweep everything away. Hold him, Mo Zhongning shouted at Wu Shifang. His plan was to summon a large number of self-destructing soul beasts, believing that, at the very least, it would be enough to significantly wound Dagonghui Yanjin. Wu Shifang's original body has been shattered at the knuckles of both hands. So, in desperation, his clone put away his longbow and grabbed the 2 heavy hammer from the ground. The two, with the clone leading the charge, decided to fight Dagonghui Yanjin together in a close combat. The clone might be sacrificed with this strategy, but at most, it will only cause Wu Shifang to lose some vitality. However, creating the right opportunity for his teammates might yield an unexpected results that may cause significant harm to Dagonghui Yanjin. Wu Shifang and his clone roared and charged forward, vowing not to retreat. Seeing the opponent resisting stubbornly, Dagonghui Yanjin showed a contemptuous smile at the corner of his mouth. "Want to stop me? You are not qualified." He rushed towards Wu Shifang and his clone like a speeding locomotive. With a loud boom, a terrifying collision sounded, and Wu Shifang, together with his clone, were trashed across the battlefield in embarrassment. As Wu Shifang fell heavily to the ground with a loud thud, he clenched his teeth tightly and placed a hand on his chest as blood trickled down from his mouth. Wu Shifang's internal organs were broken in many places. If he was not a strengthening-type mutant, he would have been dead from that collision. Dagonghui Yanjin approached Wu Shifang, placed a foot on his lying figure with his blade raised. But just when his dragonfly blade was about to hack Wu Shifang to death, his entire body suddenly disappeared from the spot. And when he came to his senses, he had already appeared in the air dozens of meters high. At the critical moment, Li Weihai had used his ability to transfer Dagonghui Yanjin away. And in addition to transferring him, several self-destructive soul beasts were also transferred as well. Unexpectedly, Dagonghui Yanjin was suddenly surrounded by hundreds of densely packed crow-like self-destructive soul beasts. They flew around him tightly with their self-destructive sequence already activated. Mo Zhongning raised a finger emitting a golden glow and immediately self-destruct all the soul beasts around Dagonghui Yanjin simultaneously. Then, seconds after, an intense explosion rang out in the air. Unfortunately, as Dagonghui Yanjin majestically fell from the sky, everyone could clearly see that except for some charred hair on his body, there was not even a single wound. Wu Shifang and his team were filled with despair at this moment. How can they fight against such an enemy? Before carrying out this mission, they were actually curious about how strong the members of Eclipse Moon really were. And although there was limited information from the first battle, that battle itself was a test after all, and the strength of that mutant organizations involved were not at the forefront. This time, however, the dozen people selected were all top-level expert in the outer cities of the Jiangnan district. The 4 of them had fought against one person, and they couldn't even pose any significant threat to Dagonghui Yanjin, let alone defeating him. Can reality be this cruel? They were both Delta-level mutants after all, but the gap in strength was as great as a chasm. He's simply a monster, Mo Zhongning stated desperately, covering his head. And this made Dagonghui Yanjin stare at them with some interest. Your cooperation was very good. It's just a pity that it's a little too weak. Mo Zhongning's self-destructing soul beasts were good at sneak attacks, and could be carried out without the opponent knowing it. However, the power of soul beasts were difficult to be maximized with just supernatural powers, because they have both reconnaissance and bionic functions. So, facing the top beastman like Dagonghui Yanjin, his ability was completely a joke. Well, it's almost time to end the fun. I'll send you on your way. Dagonghui Yanjin raised the dragonfly blade in his hand, and dashed towards Mo Zhongning like a madman, ready to hack him first. His attack was wrapped in the power of thunder, and this terrifying power made the air explode. But at this very moment, from the distant fog, a dark-shaped object broke through the air and hit Dagonghui Yanjin fiercely. Dagonghui Yanjin's eyes condensed. The timing of the attack was very clever and very vicious. The moment he swung his dragonfly blade, an attack suddenly came from the left side of his body. Dagonghui Yanjin could only stop his hands mid-swing to block. He used his left arm to quickly bulge and directly block the attack. A loud bang rang out as the heavy anchor engulfed in a golden glow hit Dagonghui Yanjin's left arm fiercely. The heavy and terrifying force made the Yokozuna's body shake, and forcefully retreat more than 10 steps to the side before coming to a halt. He was a bit stunned when he noticed the surprised assault to be a huge anchor tied with long heavy chain. And as the flying anchor fell heavily to the ground with a dull bang, Wu Shifeng, Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai, who were in despair, saw this scene. Their eyes gradually lit up with hope. They knew that the God Squad had arrived. The most legendary team with the highest mission completion rate in the entire Jiangnan region had finally joined the fray. In the direction where the chain extended, 3 figures slowly emerged from the thick fog. You guys can retreat first. We will handle the rest. As one of the 2 deputy captains of the God Squad, Bai Chunyu spoke confidently as the 3 got closer. He was in the middle of the 2 with his feminine face, his blue shoulder-length hair with a braided ponytail, and a slight smirk to top it off. On his right was a brown-haired guy with a stern face under his heavy hooded jacket. The other on his left was Li Taichung. He was wrapped in heavy silver armor, holding a thick iron chain. The 3 were all wearing their combat uniforms in an ostentatious fashion, especially Li Taichung, whose silver combat uniform made him look like a war god. Obviously, he was also the one who threw the heavy anchor. Li Taichung raised his hand and slightly shook the heavy chain. Suddenly, the heavy anchor flew into the air, and after drawing a parabola in the air, it returned to his hand as light as a feather and was carried on his shoulder. Even Sakuraba Yuzugwang and Kurosawa Akira, who were watching the battle from the back, narrowed their eyes slightly. The God team. I heard that they were very powerful. How powerful? We will know after a fight. Bai Chunyu told Wu Shifeng and the other 2 to leave quickly. Your mission has been completed, he declared. The farther you go, the better. Otherwise, I won't be able to take care of you when the fight starts. From his peripheral vision, the 3 nodded and left the battlefield in embarrassment. As for Jia Heading, who was buried deep underground, no one dared to rescue him under these circumstances. Li Weihai helped Wu Shifeng, who had been beaten like a dead dog, to the medical staff station far away from the battlefield. Anyway, back to the northern front. Zhuo Feiyu and the others were fighting more and more fiercely. The big snake had an extremely terrifying defense and attack power, forcing the team to devote 3 people to fight. And after getting familiar with Zhuo Feiyu's gunblade and locking Yu Xingyang's sniper point, the snake suddenly took the initiative on the battlefield, effortlessly knocking Zhuo Feiyu aside with its tail and heads for Yu Xingyang. It turns out that while Zhuo Feiyu and Yu Xingyang attracted the attention of the big snake, Lu Yuchen, a mutant from Wugu City, had been quietly hiding in the dark for the perfect opportunity to strike. The moment the snake got closer to Yu Xingyang on a building not far away, Lu Yuchen suddenly appeared and opened her mouth. Then, a thin pink mist gushed out like a long dragon towards the big snake, enveloping it within a few seconds. This was Lu Yuchen's ability, poisonous gas. Yu Xingyang subconsciously stayed away from the range of the gas. He knew very well how strong Lu Yuchen's poisonous gas was. An infinitesimal amount could even be fatal regardless of any protective uniform. The big snake shook its head and coughed briefly before questioning Lu Yuchen if the pink mist was poisonous. Lu Yuchen sneered and mocked triumphantly. No matter how hard your scales are, you still need to breathe, right? I believe your internal organs must be softer than your scales. Anyway, the moment the snake was done coughing, it suddenly stared at Lu Yuchen and laughed ironically. Stupid bitch, do you think you can kill me? Instead of avoiding the poisonous fog, the snake opened its mouth wide and swallowed a large amount of it. This scene made Lu Yuchen and Yu Zhengyang's scalps numb. What is he doing? Lu Yuchen stammered. The snake looked down at them with cold vertical pupils. What did you expect? I am a poisonous snake after all. Lu Yuchen felt completely useless at this moment. She never imagined that her ability could be completely suppressed. The big snake opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of a dense poisonous gas at Lu Yuchen. The overwhelming sense of dread snapped Lu Yuchen from her shock. She immediately fled in panic. However, her speed could not avoid the assault, and her entire body was soon engulfed by a pink poisonous gas. Lu Yuchen let out a wail of extreme pain, then rolled on the ground like a maggot before her death. Her face was melted directly also. Yu Zhengyang's heart sank the moment he saw this horrific scene. Lu Yuchen, a Delta-level poisonous mutant, was killed in an instant with her own poison. How were they going to deal with this prehistoric beast? The snake's cold gaze shifted to Yu Zhengyang, who was scared shitless at this moment. Next, it's your turn. As the scene shifted to Shinichiro Akutsu, he was still fighting with Xia Lingling and Yuan Hao at a stalemate. Compared with the mutants like Kamaya Negemichi and Okokai and Jin, Shinichiro Akutsu's ability was mediocre. He was just an ordinary enhanced mutant who uses a metal bat commonly used by street thugs. At the beginning, Xia Lingling could even take a certain initiative in the battle. Her strange power was very terrifying, which was extremely rare among enhanced mutants. But she was able to counter Shinichiro Akutsu's weapon with her pure flesh mainly due to Yuan Hao behind her. Yuan Hao looked weak and had no fighting power at all, but he just stood not far from Xia Lingling, shouting to cheer her on. As he cheered and encouraged, Xia Lingling's pupils also glowed with a strange light, and her strength and speed greatly improved. Shinichiro Akutsu knew that Yuan Hao was like a devoted nanny, but Xia Lingling gave him no chance to break through, so he adopted the simplest and most straightforward way of fighting to kill Xia Lingling. As the battle continued, the speed of his metal bat swinging became faster and faster. Slowly, the initiative on the battlefield changed. Xia Lingling began to fall behind in the power competition again and again. Yuan Hao increased the intensity and cheered like a madman. Suddenly, a strange energy coursed through Xia Lingling's body like lightning. She opened her mouth, and those two sharp fangs actually began to grow longer, and the nails of her 10 fingers also extended 10 centimeters. Each one was as black as a dagger. At this moment, she looked like a vampire. Xia Lingling yelled and rushed towards Shinichiro Akutsu. Shinichiro Akutsu laughed wildly, swung his metal bat with both hands, and smashed it towards her body. The game should end here. It is your honor to die at the hands of a great hero like me. Shinichiro Akutsu, a reinforcement-type mutant, with the ability codename Extreme Hero. Shinichiro Akutsu's desire was the courage to fight endlessly, and a heroic spirit of being invincible. So his ability was just ordinary but with a little twist. As long as he continues to fight, his strength will become stronger indefinitely. His growth will have no upper limit. Theoretically speaking, he can even fight with mutants at the level of Epsilon if he managed to survive fighting endlessly. Anyway, facing opponents with similar strength levels, as long as he survives to the end, he will definitely win. At this moment, his heroic value had accumulated enough. So the moment his baseball bat and Xia Lingling collided again, he cunningly avoided Xia Lingling's claws and hit her side with the baseball bat. It is hard to imagine that a blunt baseball bat can actually tear a person's body apart. However, the reality is that when the speed is fast enough, the power of a baseball bat is not much different from that of a samurai sword. So Xia Lingling's body was cut in half from the waist. In her stunned eyes, her body was split into two and rushed out under the action of inertia. The two halves of her body fell to the ground lifelessly. Yuan Hao's face turned even paler. He clenched his fists and shouted, "You bastard! You dare to hurt my Lingling!" Shinichiro Akutsu was speechless when he heard this. She has been cut in half and you call it an injury? But the next moment, he understood why Yuan Hao said that. Because hundreds of blood-colored thin tubes suddenly extended from the middle of her two halves and connected together. As the blood-colored tubes contracted, her two halves merged immediately, and every muscle was sutured tightly. But through the horrible wound, you can see that the flesh and blood are lifeless, like zombie meat that has been frozen for many years. "What?" Shinichiro Akutsu shouted in absolute disbelief. Xia Lingling got up from the ground. Her expression was cold and scary as she stares at Shinichiro Akutsu. It was at this very moment that Shinichiro Akutsu finally understood. Oh, you turned out to be a zombie. As a leader of the mutants in Seeing City, Yuan Hao is a control-type ability user with codename Zombie Manipulator. He can enhance the strength of his teammates. Yuan Hao came to Xia Lingling's side with a nervous smile, reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. Honey, are you okay? Fortunately, you are dead, otherwise you would have been killed by that attack just now. Yuan Hao then hugged Xia Lingling's arm as his smile turned extremely creepy. Sure enough, he said, it was right to kill you at the beginning. After the clear admission of Xia Lingling's zombie identity, Shinichiro Akutsu felt extremely disgusted. Turns out Yuan Hao actually fell in love with a corpse for so long. Moreover, if Xia Lingling was already dead and just a walking corpse, then who had been speaking with her body? If you think about it in detail, it's truly disgusting and scary. I didn't expect you to be a schizophrenic, perverted person who is in love with himself. Even with the zombie's undead power, Yuan Hao's ability was limited, and as he continued to fight with Shinichiro Akutsu, who could continuously improve his combat power indefinitely, the outcome of this battle was not in doubt. Xia Lingling was swiftly decapitated shortly after being assembled with some difficulty. Her head rolled in the air with a strange facial expression. On the other hand, the moment Yu Zhengyang died, Zhuofeiyu followed shortly after in the mouth of the snake. Yu Zhengyang and Zhuofeiyu were both killed and swallowed by the big snake. And at this time, Deng Shentong, who had been silently observing the battle from the rear, finally couldn't stand it anymore. Commander, it's almost over. They are not at the same level as the people of Eclipse Moon. If we continue to wait, they would all just die in vain. It's time for us to act. Zhu Zhang received Deng Shentong's request but was still a little hesitant. Only 5 members of Eclipse Moon had showed up. There are still 8 people in the dark. It seems that they also know our plan and had made some preparations. Deng Shentong replied that they can't expect to have 100% control of all intelligence in every battle, especially this one. And such a task was too boring anyway. Zhu Zhang stared at the big screen and saw that the northern front had almost collapsed. If the God team doesn't take action, everyone on the battlefield will die. Okay, you are allowed to fight. Deng Shentong showed a confident smile at the corner of his mouth, and he glanced at his teammates. Brothers, it's our turn to play. This time, let's complete the task beautifully. At this moment, Shinichiro Akutsu approached Yuan Hao and raised his bloody baseball bat with a smile. He told Yuan Hao to obediently accept his death so he can reunite with his dead woman. Unexpectedly, the metal bat suddenly fell on the ground with a dull thud. Shinichiro Akutsu lowered his head and looked at his chest. Very abruptly, a deep dent had appeared in his chest, and as blood trickled down from his mouth, he felt a sharp pain. It was as if a big hand had dug into his chest, and then grabbed his lungs and crushed them. The big snake, on the other hand, immediately got tied up into a ball by an invisible force. It understood that the real special forces of the Jiangnan district had appeared. Those guys were their biggest threat. Although incomplete, Kamaya Negemichi transformed back into his human appearance. But before he could prepare for defense, he felt an unbearable pain in his lower abdomen. It was as if his internal organs were put in a washing machine and stirred madly with many steel nails in it. He lost all his strength at once, laid on the ground, and spat out a mouthful of blood. In the depths of the thick fog, a tall and strong figure with a noticeable beard slowly approached him. You have good abilities, the bearded figure said calmly. But unfortunately, you met me and you can only be slaughtered. This figure was Liao Honglei, one of the 2 vice-captains of the God Squad named the God Fist. With just one strike, he defeated both Kamaya Negemichi and Shinichiro Akutsu. And although they had already fought a great battle, the 2 were no match for him. Also, unlike the western battlefield, only Liao Honglei came to the northern front. Not every member of the Eclipse Moon had showed up, so it was impossible for all the members of the God team to be dispatched. According to the algorithm of the Combat Command Center, Liao Honglei's ability was most suitable in dealing with Kamaya Negemichi and Shinichiro Akutsu, because his ability is a very rare space system, combined with his own powerful traditional Chinese martial art. It derives an extremely deadly killing method named the 100-step Divine Fist. Within 100 steps, his attack can ignore all physical defenses, and even penetrate heavy armor or the skin, and directly attack the internal organs. Liao Honglei didn't say much, but in the depths of the thick fog where the unknown was, a pair of cold brown eyes slowly opened. Sure enough, the God Squad had finally appeared. Just as Liao Honglei's fist was about to strike, there was a violent tumbling in the thick fog, and suddenly a huge 3-headed dog jumped out and rushed towards him. This is a 3-meter tall and 5 or 6-meter long 3-headed demon dog. It roared and immediately made the surrounding air dry. However, this did not have any effect on the fog created by the yin-yang magic. Liao Honglei's pupils shrank, and he did not expect that the other party actually had someone in the dark. It seems that no one is a fool, and everyone knows that they have to keep a backhand. Then, it depends on whose backhand is stronger. Liao Honglei blasted out with a punch, aiming at the head of one of the 3-headed demon dog. Unfortunately, the head only managed to just twist slightly. Seeing this scene, Liao Honglei's expression became serious. It was a release-type ability user. This is a bit bad. No one thought that the enemy would still have this trick up its sleeve. And judging from the power of the 3-headed demon dog, the hidden person must be very powerful. It was agreed that the most appropriate person to deal with the enemies on the northern front was Liao Honglei. But who would have thought that the other party would have made a backup plan as if they had guessed what they were doing? The 3-headed demon dog pounced on Liao Honglei with unabated momentum, but Liao Honglei evaded the attack with an incredible agility. In that very moment, he saw movements not far away approaching the 3-headed demon dog. As the tall shadows slowly walked out, it turned out to be a middle-aged man in a long suit jacket, with his hair back and wearing dark-rimmed glasses. Beside him, there was a group of supernatural beasts that were obviously condensed from supernatural powers. A giant ape that is 4 meters tall with red eyes, a fox with 6 tails and a silver-white body, a green bird with a blurry figure surrounded by whirlwinds, and a gray crow on his shoulder. The real yin-yang master of Canon Temple, Jinguji Saikairo, an officer of the Eclipse Group. Liao Honglei immediately took on a fighting stance as Jinguji Saikairo stares at him with an impatient look. He leisurely pushed his dark-rimmed glasses and stated confidently, "Your ability seems to be specially used to restrain close combat. So why don't you fight me instead?"